From taco night in Tulum to sushi in Tokyo, make every bite rewarding with Gold from Amex. Wherever you dine, 4 times membership rewards points at restaurants worldwide are piling up. Learn more at americanexpress.com/explore-gold. Terms and points cap apply.
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.
Welcome to IndoctriNation, a weekly conversation series about protecting yourself from systems of control. I'm your host, Rachel Bernstein.
You are not alone. And now there are 2 resources that I've put together specifically for your journey. This is your host, Rachel Bernstein. I am an educator and a therapist and a cult specialist. And I am very excited to announce Restart and Restore, a journal for survivors of manipulation, and a companion notebook that I've put together to go with it that has people's stories that they've shared with me that they wanted to share with you, and some wonderful quotes from people whose thoughts I truly admire, and more pages and writing prompts for you to continue with the writing that can help you along your healing journey. This isn't just another blank journal. It's a trauma-informed recovery companion, and it offers psychoeducation on the mechanics of manipulation and control and therapeutic writing prompts to explore your history and your strengths, practical exercises that transform insights into some actionable steps, and the freedom to heal at your own pace. You can do it in the time frame that works for you without any judgment or pressure. Whether you joined the organization or the relationship that was controlling as a teen or as an adult, Restart and Restore provides the structure and, I think, validation needed to process your experiences safely. I'm also excited to share, beyond the journal and its companion notebook, that I'm currently working on a second journal specifically for those born and raised in high control groups or high control family units, as their healing journey often involves different and specialized challenges. Restart and Restore and its companion notebook are available now, and you can find the link in the show notes. Thank you very much. I hope it's helpful to you or to someone you love. Hello, everyone. Today on the show, we have Daniel Allen Cox. He's the author of 4 novels. And I Felt the End Before It Came, Memoirs of a Queer Ex-Jehovah's Witness is one of the books he's going to be talking about today. It was named one of the best books in 2023 by Publishers Weekly. Daniel's essays have appeared in The Guardian, The Globe and Mail, Electric Literature, and LitHub, and have been recognized by the Best American Essays, Best Canadian Essays, and the Canadian National Magazine Awards. He's a reviewer for the Brooklyn Rail and lives in Montreal, and it was a pleasure to talk to him. I'm so glad you get to hear Daniel now. I am delighted to have Daniel Allen Cox with me today. It is so nice to be able to meet you and talk to you and find out about your story and your book and you. And so I would love for you to take a moment to introduce yourself and then we'll start talking. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm Daniel. I'm a writer in Montreal, and I'm the author of I Felt the End Before It Came, Memoirs of a Queer Ex-Jehovah's Witness, a few other books, and several other essays. And here we are.
Okay. So, over the years, I've had experience working with a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses and people who contact me who are in relationships with people who are or were Jehovah's Witnesses and have the challenge of needing to connect with someone who might not really know how to do that, might not know the language of emotion, might not be able to deal with fear in the same way or whatever it is, or might come across as highly judgmental, a lot of the after effects. And so already there are the challenges built in. And then on top of it, being queer, being anything that is relegated for dismissal, for disconnection. It's an interesting issue within already an existing issue, just in terms of how you're treated and how you're taught to feel about yourself. So I know there is a lot to talk about, and I want to make sure we have time to talk about after you leave and what helps, because a lot of people listening to this podcast are going to be in that situation of wondering what will help them really feel better, feel settled, feel that they can love themselves. And so I would love to hear a little bit about your growing up years and where you were and what it was like and sort of what generation you are. Just sort of set the stage for the beginning of your life.
Yeah, I was born in 1976, the year of the Montreal Olympics. And so I'm as old as Olympic Stadium, and it's falling apart at a rate far faster than I am. And so I'm very pleased about that.
Good.
That's the best way I could set the stage in my hometown of Montreal, Quebec. I was raised in what's called the truth. The witnesses call their religion the truth. And so over the years, I went to various Jehovah's Witness conventions at the Olympic Stadium, where we would sit in the heat and sun and listen to speakers expound about the coming end of the world. Of course, they had just missed a prediction in 1975 that the end of the world would come. It didn't. And so several thousands of Jehovah's Witnesses left the truth. And so I came along after the end of the world. And then I was told about a new one, right? And so growing up with a very strict moral code, of course, almost nothing is permitted, especially not being queer. And that's why I'm here on the podcast today. So growing up with that code, there's no option other than to fail. And that's how they've rigged it. And we're still here, and the end of the world has not come.
Right. So it's a question I get asked a lot about why Jehovah's Witness does that repeatedly. And they're sort of stock answers that I give, but I would love to hear from you about what your perspective is about why they keep doing it and being willing to risk being wrong over and over and over and over again. And thank goodness they're wrong. But so it's not like I'm upset about it. But I'm just wondering, why do you think they take that risk?
Yeah, from a purely practical standpoint, it's a great question, right? I mean, if we look at their less than humble beginnings as a millenarian group out of Pennsylvania in the 1870s, I think the early leadership was looking for a way to differentiate themselves and their message, right? And to attract a certain following, they needed to come up with something new. And so they came upon interpreting numbers and dates from the book of Daniel, book of Ezekiel, book of Revelation. And so originally it was a safe bet because their predictions were far enough into the future, right? We're talking 1914 and then 1925, and then they extended it to 1975. And so they had 50 years to be perfectly wrong with no consequences.
Perfectly right.
It's just interesting that today they no longer do that. And so the leadership has altered the doctrine so they don't give date predictions anymore. And so I think they've been burned for a century and a half, and I guess enough was enough.
It's very bold, right? And you need to be able to have some sort of way out, like some explanation. And it's very convenient to have it be some sort of spiritual explanation. It's not the only group to do this. It just happens to do it repeatedly. I'm glad that it's taken a bit of a break, because it does make people panic or sell their property or give away all their things, say goodbye to people.
Yes, or not go to university, or not take care of their health, or not, spend time with their kids and with their family, and of course all these things. I think they based this, or at least in the past, they based this on the doctrine of a quote unquote new light, right? So Jehovah God has revealed new light to us through his earthly channel, which was, of course, 12 white cis men in Brooklyn. And once they decreed something new, it's fine because, new light came. And so how could we know without new light? And so there was always an excuse, right? And I think there's also a forgetting curve. And so as generations die, they forget these past unfulfilled promises. And so people are born and die in the religion. And I've seen it happen. I've seen people who were born in it and who've died. I've seen their entire lives encapsulated by this deception, right? And so I keep coming back to this feeling of lost, like all the things that they didn't do, some of the many things I didn't do in the earlier parts of my life, and which I'm doing now, right? So there's loss, but on the other side of it, and I guess we'll get to that a bit later, if there truly is another side of it, then there is only opportunity, right, to fulfill things that were unfulfilled. And we're not talking about predictions. We're talking about life progression.
Right. When you mention not pursuing things, that's also something that I hear about two things in particular. This idea of, and then I just thought of a third thing. So of course, so for the first thing is, not planning for the future, because will there be a future? So why do that? And that's really not considered a priority to be planning ahead, having an education, doing something to plan for the future, putting money away for the future, all of it. And then people who have a lot of nightmares, night terrors from a lot of the visuals. And then the experience for cis men, but typically what I hear more about is the experience for women and people who are gay or trans, I suppose, too, right? I mean, I haven't worked with someone trans who is a Jehovah's Witness, but I know they exist. And I'm sure their experience is not at all a happy one, right? So tell me about growing up in this environment and what it was like for you, and also at what point you started to kind of reveal yourself to yourself, because that's sort of where it starts, right? To sort of be aware enough and open enough just to see what's true and be willing to see what's true after it's been demonized to that degree. It takes a lot of bravery.
For the early part of my life, I'd say until 11 or 12, I would say most of the rules made sense in the world I was living in, right? And the world I was living in was a suburb of Montreal, very regulated by this schedule of meetings. And so we had to attend 5 meetings a week, sometimes 2 a night. And the other side of it was visiting my even more conservative Jehovah's Witness family in Florida for like a large part of the year during our summer times. And yeah, they took the religion to new heights and still do. So swinging between those two worlds, I didn't have much of a fighting chance to discern that the rules didn't really make sense or didn't apply or were unjust or were completely out there. I'd say for me, a few things were the wedge that started to increase awareness for me. Sexuality was a huge one, of course, right? These are changes that come from within and show that you don't belong. And at the same time, you don't feel like you've done anything wrong. And so instantly there's this point that doesn't make sense. There's this flaw in the logic and the flaw in the reasoning. Of course, I can't say the word reasoning, Rachel, without thinking about this book that we had to take door to door. It was bound in brown leather and it was called Reasoning from the Scriptures. And it was basically a book of rebuttals. And so anytime somebody had a point of contention or if they raised like a flag or said, yeah, this is not true, we would literally open the book, flip to the page, and give a rebuttal, which was, of course, thought terminating cliches. And so I was a kid who spewed thought terminating cliches until I started to actually hear them for what they were and became a bit of a rebel. And of course, I would also see how the doctrine was unfair to women, right? I would see how they were not allowed to speak from the podium. And if they did, they couldn't address the audience directly or make eye contact. It had to be a woman speaking to another woman on stage. I remember this, just these like very awkward and sad moments where people were demeaned at the Kingdom Hall, which is our place of worship. They're called Kingdom Halls. And I saw people waste their lives. I saw people try to live their lives and not be allowed to. I saw friends who died as a result of it, and which ultimately pushed me to come forward with my story and write the memoir, right? And so I think too many things piled up, too many points where the flaws in the logic created something big enough that I could go through. I was not a very good Jehovah's Witness, and I would say nor was my immediate family, and that was kind of a saving grace, right? Because when you do have exposure to outside media, and I think all Jehovah's Witnesses do, we're not locked away in cabins necessarily, and we're not cut off from the internet or from books, although we were discouraged from reading anything that was not produced by our group, but we still had access to it. But I think I had a bit more access to it and like a bit more access to things like culture and to music. I was a musician. I played. I could see things in musicians who were Jehovah's Witnesses and left, and who were not Jehovah's Witnesses and then later became. And so I was in a lot of crosshairs and I could see a lot of change.
Right, right. Incredible. And it's really good to sometimes be in the mix of that, as difficult as it is, as conflicted as it is. You get to have a sense of things. You get to have a kind of a vision of maybe something's off or the reality of the situation. I mean, it's not easy to be in that place. It can be very conflicted, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Back to our terminology, to our really bizarre idiolect, right? So the world is an expression in Jehovah's Witness terminology. It means everybody outside Jehovah's Witnesses. And so either you're in the truth or you're in the world, right? So I was taught to be afraid of the world, Rachel. I mean, this is not much of a fighting chance. So when you're in the world, okay, we're told this is like an evil place. We're told that people who are not in the truth cannot love. They have no idea how to love because their father is Satan, the devil, right? So I was told that love didn't exist outside of my little confines. I'm talking about the 100 or so people in my kingdom hall, and by extension, the 7 or 8 million Jehovah's Witnesses around the world. Those are the people who can love, but outside of that, it's just not there for you. So that was interesting for me because I found love outside, and this is something that I really want to focus on, is that to people who think that there is no love if I leave this group, that is the biggest lie ever perpetuated. In fact, there's more, and you just can't access it.
And you're too afraid to take the chance if there's this dichotomy that's built up, this black and white, the truth or the world. And of course, the message is that the world doesn't hold the truth. But it's also true that when people leave, they find that they get sympathy, they get compassion, they get forgiveness, they get to make mistakes, they get to have someone's arm around them, cry with them, they get to be able to have things they didn't have within the group. And so, yes, there is, from so far everyone who I've talked to, there's much more love outside. And even if you want to continue having a relationship with God, whatever that means to you, and that's not a necessity, but if that means something to you, people have said they thought that they were leaving God's love, and they were not. And so it exists on many different planes.
Exactly, right? And they find empathy and solidarity with people who don't have the same backgrounds, where they're educational, religious, cultural, geographical. So one of the key challenges of learning within Jehovah's Witnesses is that you have no context, right? You are completely decontextualized. And so how can you really learn about the world, or how can you access true empathy if you're never really in touch with people who don't have your experience, right? And that was one of the amazing things of touring my book and talking about it, was just the number of people who would come to events and who would say, "Hey, I'm Catholic, I'm Mormon, or I was Mormon, or I come from this super small cult that you have never heard of, and we're only 300 people, but my experience was so like yours." And also former Jehovah's Witnesses who would come to the events or write to me or send me emails and say, "I was a witness, but I have a completely different experience from yours." And I'm like, "Really? I thought we were like a homogenous cult." But apparently there are many different flavors of cult, Rachel. I think that you are an expert in that, of course.
Yes,
But,
yeah.
you know, even like within the same group, there's not the same interpreting of the rules. And that information is only discoverable after you leave, because that conversation is not allowed when you're still inside.
It is really true. And I wonder then for you, with your experience of sort of coming into your own, what was the trajectory there? How did you come to that place of deciding that you needed to go? How did you go? Who did you reach out to? It's extremely hard to do it alone. And so I'm hoping there was someone along the way who could help, but maybe not. So I'm curious about that switch that went on for you, about how this isn't a place for me any longer, and how that was taken also, and what it's been like since you've gotten out.
Yes, of course, I would be happy to answer that. I mean, it really comes down to bowling in Montreal's suburbs of the West Island, right? When I was out one night throwing strikes at the end of the world, hanging out with my witness peers, and, we were having what's called, I guess, like a wholesome evening of recreation where there were obviously chaperones and there was no alcohol. And our parties were very boring, I have to say, but we did get to do a lot of bowling. And this one evening, I happened to tell one of my friends that I found her boyfriend was handsome. And I just dropped that in the air, and no one commented on it. And it just kind of went unnoticed, or so I thought, until a week later when I got a phone call at home from our congregation's presiding elder, and he's, the older wise man who's, I guess, in charge of our faith and has to check in with us and sees himself as, of course, it's always a man, sees himself as a spiritual shepherd, but also as a disciplinarian and someone who has to lay down God's law. And so he called me and asked me point blank, "Are you a homosexual?" And I said yes. There was no hesitation, and so that tells me everything I needed to know about myself in terms of how and why I left. And it's at times hard to access these memories and to know what I was feeling because it was a long time ago. We're talking the 90s, right? But I was very clear. And I remember being very clear headed and also a bit defiant on the call, right? I was later told that this is a very unusual way of conducting congregation discipline, and said nobody called you into a conference room or into the back of the Kingdom Hall in like a closed room where you would sit with three elders and they would judge your fate. I'm like, no, it was one guy on the phone. And so it was probably illegal, but not many rules, I think, apply to this sort of thing. At least at the time it didn't, right? And so it was a big FU, and he said, here are the options. One, write a letter of disassociation saying that you are no longer part of Jehovah's Witnesses. Or two, we can disfellowship you, which is just a fancy word for kicking somebody out, of course. And I chose the option to write a letter. And I suppose that's where this whole writing thing comes from, Rachel, right? It probably starts there. It could start a bit earlier with songwriting, but if I had to trace back where this book came from, it probably comes from that letter. It's certainly the best thing I ever wrote. I certainly don't remember a word of it. It was on loose leaf. I sent the only copy in the mail. And then it was announced at that week's meeting. And I had to tell my mom on the payphone that this had occurred before she found out at the meeting with everybody else. And so my hand was forced, and it was a very painful time for us as a family. And I did not have a lot of support. So all my friends were in the truth, and they were in the West Island. And so I kind of hung out there for a bit and did odd jobs and spoke to my family. And my mother broke the rules and spoke to me during this time. And that's also what I mean by us not being amazing Jehovah's Witnesses, is that my mother's sense of empathy and her sense of justice prevented her from following the rule to shun her son.
Wow. Hey.
Which she maintains to this day. She's been a Jehovah's Witness ever since, and we still talk and text almost every day. So how's that for breaking the rules?
Wow. Oh, wow, that's incredible and unique. And bravo to your
Very
mom.
lucky.
Mhm.
Thank you. And so I have the support now, but I didn't have the support then. And so I moved downtown. I moved out of the suburbs into a place, and, sort of like a place I could afford. And I made new friends, and I was ready for like a new social life, I guess. And I don't think I realized how difficult it was to do so without institutional support, to do so without my religion checking in to see how I was doing, and to do so without like a lot of family support, with the exception of my mother, of course. And so she was a lifeline, and she remains a lifeline. I wish I could be a lifeline to her, but there's aspects of her I cannot reach today because of her being in Jehovah's Witnesses.
What are things that you can't reach because of her being a Jehovah's Witness?
We can't connect on philosophy. We can't really connect on a sense of justice or activism or even politics. Witnesses don't vote and base this on a line from the gospel that where Jesus says that his kingdom is no part of this world. Well, they take this very literally, and they don't vote, they don't protest. On the morning of news about George Floyd, I remember visiting jw.org to see how they were spinning it. And the headline was something about protests being useless. And instead, why not wait for God's kingdom to solve all of our problems? And so it's a complete abdication of responsibility for anything. And so it's very difficult to deal with somebody who believes that, even, I'll say especially, someone that you love dearly.
Yeah, right, right. You know, it's interesting too when you have this thought that what's happening in the world really doesn't apply to you, then you don't know what's happening and you don't take a stand. And if you don't vote, then you're really not participating in any kind of process, but you stay kind of in your own cocoon, in your own bubble. And I think there are people I've talked to who were raised Jehovah's Witness and others, where when they become exposed to world news, they are overwhelmed. They haven't had a chance to have stories grow. Like it's like jumping in the deep end. And it is overwhelming, and they don't necessarily know about world history, and they don't know about a lot of things. And it can be really overwhelming, along with learning about pop culture. And there's just so much to suddenly be exposed to, and to know that you probably have to take your time with it and do it slowly so that you don't hide out. I wonder how it was for you.
Well, it's still overwhelming, I have to say, Rachel. I still feel a sense of overwhelm when I have to process like a lot of information at once, especially political information. I've become, I guess, self-taught over the years, with the guidance of many kind and generous and beautiful mentors, through endless reading of everything I missed, and also all the new literature coming out. And I have no university degree because I was never encouraged to go to school. In fact, I was discouraged not to attend higher education and instead to devote my life to serving Jehovah God, which I never did fully, of course. I left, but I never continued school. I made a few false starts, and I've actually completed several credits towards a college degree now, but it's a work in progress, right? And it's quite something to be almost 50 years old in a room of exclusively 20-year-olds, right? And so that can be its own form of intimidation, right? And so we do find our learning in all sorts of ways. I've learned through writing, I've learned through traveling, and also I've learned through activism. And I don't think I give myself enough credit for being part of activist circles, right? And all that has actually taught me, it's a thing, and it's been important in my life.
Right. Okay. Wow. And what I find interesting too, going back to this idea of truth, you spoke your truth. You followed along with what is clearly of importance to Jehovah's Witnesses, or they wouldn't call the entire organization the truth. And here you said, yup, when asked, and you wrote a letter and you didn't hide from it. And, what is often ironic is that when the truth is of this premium, still when people share their truth, they can sometimes get punished for it. And so it can feel like the truth can be a trap at times. But still, you did what was in line, I think, with your conscience. And that's entirely important. I wonder if we can move into more of you expressing yourself in this book. So tell me how that happened and what the process was like for you to be writing the book, and also the response that you get, because sometimes people are afraid. They're afraid of backlash. And they're also kind of looking forward to people being affirming or connecting with them over it. It could be all over the place. And so, how did you decide that you wanted to write the book, and what was that process like? And then what it's been like since?
The book began very innocuously. So I felt the end before I came wasn't originally a memoir. It was one essay, and it was a dissection of Michael Jackson's short film Thriller. Jackson was a Jehovah's Witness. He was our most famous one, and our leadership was always torn between like fawning over him, bragging about him, and or disciplining him, right? And so he was always falling out of favor. And of course, he had no choice but to be. And so I was always fascinated by him culturally. And I knew that I had a special connection to him, given our background. And so I decided to analyze the music video for the song Thriller frame by frame. And I didn't get very far into that, Rachel, until I realized, okay, well, this is actually now kind of becoming about me, right? Because I was looking for, you actually mentioned earlier this intense, vivid Armageddon imagery, right? Occult imagery, right? All of this scaremongering visuals that the witnesses include in the Watchtower magazine, in the Awake magazine, in their other volumes. And this has actually influenced many, many artists who were Jehovah's Witnesses, Donald Glover, all of these people. And so I wanted to untangle that imagery for Jackson. And I quickly realized, okay, this is becoming about me, and this is becoming about my emotions. And every time I published a book, right? So I published now 4 novels and a memoir. The memoir was last. But after each one of my novels, I would get questions, when are you going to write about Jehovah's Witnesses? And I would get very bristly, and I would get very defensive and say, if you looked on page 87, you can see I'm clearly referencing something there, So I would claim, sometimes in a rather like exaggerated or even frustrated way, but I've already addressed this, And in a sense, I had moved on from it. And some very close people in my life, or people who were close to me, pointed out that, well, no, buddy, you actually haven't addressed it at all. And as a writer, I'm not going to believe you that you say that you've addressed it until it comes out in your writing. And I'm like, well, this is a very good point, and you could be onto something. But I didn't feel it until I started writing. And then it came out. And then everything came out. And then I started writing essay after essay after essay. And I started to think about my past. I started to research all the old Watchtower magazines. I would go online just on image search and find these hallucinatory magazines that, as a teenager, I would be bringing door to door pictures of the Grim Reaper, pictures of Satanism, the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, magazines about AIDS and how it's a plague from disobeying God's laws, more magazines about protest and saying how they're futile. And there was actually one of them that distinctly looked like an ACT UP march. And I'm like, okay, they're targeting queer people here, right?
Right.
And the more I would read, and this is in the past, I would say I started this work in 2018, right? And 2018, 2019. And the more I would read, it was like, not a single mention of trans people, not a single mention, not a single mention of non-binary people. The word queer is not even used. It's either gay or homosexual, right? So not even any terminology to describe the people who they say are breaking the rules or who can't be Jehovah's Witnesses. They simply don't exist. If you can't be referred to, then you don't exist. And so I was getting angrier at this point, right? I was feeling a sense of anger I had not felt previously, thinking I had dealt with this stuff before, but not really. And then two of my friends from the old Kingdom Hall died related to substance use.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. And the substance use, I feel, and many of us feel, was also related to their shunning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I went to their funerals, and it was a real trip to see all of these old friends of mine who had left the truth. Some of them we knew, and some of them we didn't know that the other had left.
Oh,
And we
wow.
hadn't been in touch all these years, right? So
Wow.
I really want to like press the point here of the social rupture.
Yeah.
Just because two people were raised together in the same Kingdom Hall
Right.
and then left doesn't mean that they'll ever talk to each other again, because they might not even like know how to get in touch, or the memories might be so painful that you don't want to get in touch, right? It's just kind of like an awkward reminder of where you came from and who you used to. And so we grieved at these funerals, and at one of the nightclubs afterwards, we danced and we cried, and it was very intense. And I realized that there is no way I cannot write this book now, right? And so it came out in states of calm, in states of reflection, and also in states of anger. And then I published one of the essays, and who would become my future agent, Akin, saw it, and he pinged me, wrote to me and said, "Is there a book here, Daniel?" And
Ah.
then I said, "Funny you should ask."
Right?
Yeah.
Nice. Uh-huh.
And then it came out. It was, he sold the book to Penguin Random House Canada, which I was astounded by, and I remain astounded by. And it just had like a really beautiful unfolding. And I got to tour it for 2 years and meet so many people of similar backgrounds, different backgrounds, people who expanded my life and knowledge and heart with so much wisdom about what it means to find connection, about to make your dreams come true, to dare to do something independently, to break rules, right? And so I just met so many amazing people. It would take another 12 hours to list them all. And I made a few enemies. So the biggest enemy I made was the Jehovah's Witnesses themselves. When I published a companion piece in The Guardian, I think it was a week after my book came out, I mentioned three things that the witnesses took umbrage with. One was their lack of protecting children from sexual abuse. Two was their abysmal treatment of women. And three was the fact that their policies of shunning led to the deaths of my friends. And the headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses in the UK wrote to The Guardian to formally object and to ask for proof of all of these things, of course, right? And we composed a long, beautiful letter that was even longer than the essay that was published in The Guardian itself. And then we never heard back from them, right? And so this is just one of their scare tactics, right? To intimidate people to not tell their stories. And I had my stories. I had stories of friends who had died. And so there was no way I was going to hold back from telling that.
There is this interesting thing about these three subjects because they're so close to people's hearts. They're the source of pain for so many people. They are the reason that people need help, need friends after leaving. And these are the things that they're going to take umbrage with. I mean, what you want when you want to be able to see, you want to be able to see that a group cares. You want to know that they're not going to make you wrong for sharing how people were harmed or how they harmed themselves because of the ways that they were harmed. You want to know that they are willing to say, similar to a partner who has wronged you, I'm sorry. Let me look at this. You're not a bad person. And you tell the truth, as evidenced by, we asked you, you said yes. And so there's something for us to learn here. There have been kind of cultic groups in the past that have done that. They've gone to cult conferences because they realize that what they were either born into or what they've gotten involved in or what they're now leading is something that actually is unhealthy in so many ways, and they want to learn how to do it right. So just the fact that they have an issue with those three things, it can make people feel hopeless about it ever being different because they're not looking at themselves. They're looking at you, and you're just being the truth teller. And so controlling environments don't like truth tellers. I am so happy that you are one. I am so happy that you are telling your story and you're also honoring other people's stories. And I know we've come to the end of our time hanging out today together, but it was a real pleasure to meet you. You know, what you're sharing is so vital, so important. This is a very large organization and it affects so many people. And I think so many people hide the impact of it. And so you don't know that sometimes people are the walking wounded as they learn to seem okay and they're disconnected from each other for similar reasons that you mentioned, like why you didn't know another person had left and being in touch with each other. People, you know, are needing to have these opportunities to connect. And so to give them this place where they can then write to you and say, I'm here too. I've had this experience. I'm sure it feels very healing and really reunifying, pierces the isolation. So it's lovely and wonderful and important and life-saving that you've provided this. It's been a pleasure to talk to you and tell people where they can find your work online and your books.
Yeah, thank you. I had an exceptionally good time talking with you this evening.
Oh, good.
So yes, I felt the end before it came is available in stores. Other news about me is on my website, danielleallencox.net.
So I wish you well, and it would be great to continue the conversation at any time. If there's more you want to talk about, just be in touch.
Let's.
Okay, great.
Have a great time. Thank you.
One more thing before you go. It is so powerful and heartfelt, actually, to speak to someone like Daniel. He has been through such a time and has been defamed and marginalized and has made to feel less than, and grew up having a sense about himself, but also hearing people within Jehovah's Witnesses defame what he was and what he is. There is something so isolating about that. I think people don't realize just how awful it can be and just how much it can make people so fearful of ever being revealed or ever being able to be themselves. What's interesting, too, is that when you are defamed in that way, you can think, I must have done something wrong, or, as he talked about, I am wrong. But whether you believe in God or not, religious teachings do say that God is the creator of all. So why would God create something that is wrong? And when parents kick children out of the house because they don't like that they're gay, they don't like that they're trans, they don't like certain things about them, which is part of who they are and how they were born in the world, and then they're rejected or ejected from their family system. I also don't understand it. I've never understood it. A parent says, We created you, we made you, and now you're not what I wanted or you're not right. So we're going to just throw you away? I just wonder what goes wrong there, why the parental instinct doesn't kick in as often as it should in those moments to say, wait, hang on. You are someone who we love, and we never want to be able to live our life without you. And if we have an issue with you, that's our issue, and we will figure out a way to address it. I wish that happened more often. When you walk around feeling like you are wrong, then it can really set you up in your life for being mistreated and feeling like you deserve less. You deserve to be mistreated. You deserve sometimes to be abused. You deserve to be marginalized. It's very hard to develop self-esteem at times. It's very hard to know that what you are in this world is something that people can love, and something that people can like, and something that people can respect, or that you're something that people actually just don't care about. Like, okay, now can we move on to the more important part of the conversation? And that is so nice and so relieving when people make a big proclamation about themselves. They get the courage up to say, I am this, because that was something that was so abhorrent, so evil in other contexts. But then in certain environments, people will say, all right, don't know why you felt you needed to tell me that. I don't actually really care. Thanks for letting me know. If that was important, I'm cool with it. Everyone should be cool with it. Moving on. So let's go on with the meeting, or let's go on with our lunch. And when people are, again, getting the courage up to make an announcement, they'll sometimes call me and say, that was way easier than I thought it was going to be. And I was so relieved. That was just never my experience growing up. I also really think about the term needing to come out of the closet, and that people are told to stay in the closet, or they are having to announce that they're coming out of the closet, or people will say, so-and-so came out of the closet. And I would love a world where there's no closet. You don't have to come out from anything. You can just be. If you're a good person, you're a good person, and that should be the reason that people like you or don't like you if you're not very nice. But I think that maybe one day, I hope, in some circles, it will be different. It's just hard when we see sometimes what's happening in society when things are becoming more divisive. Things are becoming a lot less tolerant and inclusive in some ways, and again, in some circles. So there's a lot more work that needs to be done. I love the part of Daniel's story, too, where when he was asked if he was gay, he said yes, because he was taught, in terms of the value system of being in that group, that you tell the truth. So he told the truth. So it's an interesting thing and a funny thing. When we ask people questions, they tell us the truth, and then we punish them for their answer. What is the motivator then for them to be honest? I am really glad that he was able to use the guideline he was given about how to be in the world and how to respond to questions as a way of being able to say, this is who I am. I love that. Thank you so much to Daniel for the literature that he's put out, being a resource for people, helping people through that painful process of having been dejected and rejected and looked down upon or harassed or abused, so that they could find a safe person to talk to, a safe space, and connect with others who have been through similar experiences. It's so vital. It is so necessary to pierce the isolation that sometimes leads to suicidal ideation. Thank you again to Daniel, and I'll talk to you all next week.
Thank you very much for listening. Please support Indoctrination on Patreon at patreon.com/indoctrination. Be sure to give us a follow on our social media. Find us on Facebook and Instagram using @Indoctrination Podcast. And for Twitter, find us at @_Indoctrination. We love hearing from you too. So send us an email at indoctrinationshow@gmail.com. And for more updates on the show, visit our website at www.podpage.com/indoctrination.
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.